Hello, my name is Kortney Schutt, and I will be talking about employer branding and social media marketing for my talent acquisition and development final. So let's go ahead and dive in. Before we completely dive in, let's take a look at what we're going to learn today. So these objectives will guide our discussion and activities, and they will help us focus on the key takeaways from this lesson. So first, by the end of the lesson, you'll be able to define employer branding, which is basically how a company markets itself as a place to work. We'll discuss why this matters. A strong employer brand attracts better talent, reduces turnover, and can even save hiring costs. We'll also talk about how the impact of authenticity and consistency attracts the right kind of people. Next, we'll learn how companies use social media platforms to showcase their employer brand. We'll even explore examples on LinkedIn, Instagram, and even TikTok, and see how these channels let companies tell their story visually, authentically, and in real time. Finally, we'll get to realize some real-world campaigns like Starbucks, hashtag to be a partner campaign, and Netflix's Culture Deck. So, to see what works, why it works, and what we can learn from them. And this will help us connect theory with practice and think critically about what makes an employer brand strong. So these three objectives will guide everything we do today. And as we go through the slides and examples, keep these goals in mind. By the end, you'll not only understand employer branding, but you'll be able to identify strategies and analyze these real life examples yourself. So, what is it? What exactly is employer branding? Think of it as a way that a company market itself, its products, all of those, the way it wants to identify, right? So it's not marketing to customers, but to current and potential employees. It's how people perceive what it's like to work at a specific place. So ask yourself, if you were job hunting, how would you decide which company to apply to? A lot of that decision comes down to perception, what people see online, hear from employees, and feel about the company culture. So, number one is, why does it matter? It's a definition and a key idea. So, employer branding is how an organization promotes its identity as an employer. It's about communicating culture, values, and what makes the company a great place to work. A strong employer brand helps companies stand out in a competitive talent market, attract candidates who are a great cultural fit, and reduce turnover and hiring costs. So when candidates see a company with a clear, authentic brand like Patagonia, with their sustainability mission, they're more likely to apply and feel excited about working there. This is especially important for younger generations who research employers online before even applying. So understanding employer branding is the foundation for everything we'll be talking about today, from social media recruiting to real world case studies like Starbucks and Netflix. It sets the tone for how companies attract and retain the right kinds of talent. Now that we understand what employer branding actually is, let's break it down into the key elements that make a brand strong and attractive to talent. So think of this like a checklist for what companies should showcase if they want to stand out. We'll look at four components: culture, values, employee experience, and visuals. So culture, it's what it's like to work there. Culture is the heartbeat of an employer brand. It's the vibe, the way people collaborate, and how the work actually gets done. Values, what the company stands for. Values are more than buzzwords, they guide decisions and behavior. Employees and candidates look for alignment. So, do my personal values match the company's mission? Just like Patagonia on that last slide, it highlights environmental sustainability to attract employees who care about their mission. Um, Employee experience, testimonials, reviews, real stories. So, candidate perception comes from actual employee experience. So Glassdoor reviews, Instagram stories, or short videos that give insight on day-to-day life. Visuals are consistent design and tone. So visuals of an employer brand reinforce the message. Logos, social media posts, career pages, and videos should all feel like the same story. Consistency makes the brand credible and memorable. A tip is to show, don't tell. Don't just list your values. Let candidates see them in action through photos and videos. All right, so let's take a look at a real world example of employer branding in action. So, Salesforce calls its employees Ohana, which is Hawaiian for family. This isn't just a cute name, it's a reflection of their culture and values. So, their culture is they want to highlight like feeling part of a community. By referring to employees as Ohana, Salesforce emphasizes community belonging, and support. Employers really try to emphasize this in order to make employees know that they feel valued as a part of something bigger than just their job tasks. They are part of a bigger culture and a bigger company. An example quote that I found from a Salesforce employee was, "At Salesforce, I feel part of a family. They call us Ohana because we look out for one another." The values of Salesforce would be the Ohana concept also highlights key company values, inclusion, purpose, and mutual respect. This shows potential candidates that the company cares about people, not just profits. Why does that work for employer branding? This approach creates authenticity. That word will be said so many times during this presentation. It's very, very important for an employer brand to be authentic. Candidates see a real culture rather than just corporate slogans. It also strengthens retention because employees who feel like part of a family are more likely to stay. Salesforce shows that when companies highlight culture and values through authentic employee stories, it strengthens their employer brand and attracts the talent who aligns with their mission and values. All right, so next let's take a look at Electronic Arts, or EA. They've built a strong employer brand by spotlighting real employees through their Inside EA videos. This is a great example on how companies use stories to show what it's actually like working in a space. Such a cool story. So, EA features employees talking about their roles, growth, and day to day experiences. These stories give candidates a clear picture of what it's like to work at the company, the challenges, the wins, the culture, and action. The visuals for EA, the videos are professionally done, like you would expect for a big video game company to have. Um, but they still feel authentic. You'll see real employees, real offices, and real projects. Visual storytelling helps reinforce the message that the brand feels approachable and human. So, by sharing these experiences, EA builds trust with potential candidates. Candidates can see if they would fit in the culture and whether their values align with the company's. So, EA demonstrates that authentic employee stories combined with engaging visuals are one of the most effective ways to communicate your employer brand and attract the right talent. So, you can go to the next slide here. So let's take a look at Google, one of the most recognized employer brands in the world. When candidates think of Google, they often imagine free meals, game rooms, and highly innovative environment to work in. But it's more than just the perks. It's about the overall employee experience. So Google has this project called Life at Google where they walk you through some day in the life, some how to prepare for your interviews, and really takes you through the hiring process and then what it's like to be an employee at Google. And this is just a short clip of a day in the life. That's just a small glimpse into what it's like to work in her role at Google, which I thought was kind of cool. So, Google fosters a culture where employees are encouraged to think creatively, take risks, and work collaboratively across teams. So, programs like Google's 20% time, where employees can spend a portion, 20% of their time on passion projects, highlight their focus on innovation. Google invests heavily in employees' professional and personal growth. They have access to training, mentorship, and leadership programs, as well as wellness programs, flexible schedules, and mental health resources. This um, combination, makes employees feel supported, valued, and motivated. Google emphasizes transparency in their leadership. They have regular TGIF meetings and Q&A sessions with executives that allow employees to ask questions and provide feedback. This communication strengthens trust and engagement. Google's employee experience shows how a company can combine culture, perks, and development opportunities to attract and retain top talent. It's a great example of an employer brand lived through real employee experience. So let me go next. Perfect. All right. So visuals are one of the most powerful ways to communicate an employer brand. They tell a story without needing words. So let's take a look at how a company like UltraDent uses visuals to convey culture, values, and product excellence. Okay, so UltraDent showcases their workplace, employee activities, and product development through all of their social media, photos, and videos. This and then videos like this help candidates see what day-to-day life is like and the kind of projects that they might work on. Showing employees interacting with UltraDent products throughout their social media emphasizes pride in their work and craftsmanship. For example, visuals of lab teams testing dental products or collaborating on new formulas will highlight teamwork, innovation, and quality focus. The same visual styles maintain across all of their social media and career pages. And it helps with all of the consistent colors, fonts, and tone is really reinforcing that brand identity. So candidates can recognize the company's culture and values just by scanning posts or product images. Employee generated content like behind the scenes photos or short videos adds authenticity. So when the candidates see real people enjoying their work, it strengthens trust and attraction to the company. Visuals are more than just decoration. They communicate culture, values, and employee experience instantly. UltraDent uses this effectively to attract talent who care about innovation and quality. Right. Social media isn't just for posting memes or keeping up with friends. It's become a very powerful tool for recruiting top talent. In fact, 84% of companies now use social media to find their candidates. The question is why? Because it allows companies to tell their story, reach a wider audience, and create real connections with potential employees. So, platforms like LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram let employees show their culture and values in creative ways. For example, short videos, behind the scenes photos, and employee testimonials let candidates see the company in action. Social media makes the company more relatable. Candidates don't just see a logo or a job posting, they see real employees, real stories, and real experiences. This helps create trust and emotional connection, which can make a candidate way more likely to apply. Unlike traditional recruiting methods, social media allows for a two-way interaction. Candidates can comment, ask questions, and engage with content, giving their company a chance to respond and reinforce their employer brand. So on this slide, you'll see the logos of LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, um, or X, excuse me. It's been switched for a little bit now. And they are very common platforms for employer branding. Each platform serves a slightly different purpose. LinkedIn is professional networking, TikTok more creative and viral, Instagram emphasizes visuals and storytelling. Um, I could go on, but there's it's each separate site serves its own purpose, and it's important for employers to plug in to tap into those potential markets if they're looking for talent there. All right. So here's a look at Starbucks' career Instagram page. So if you scroll through their posts, you'll notice right away that it doesn't look like a traditional recruiting content. It feels more like a community, and that's intentional. Starbucks calls its employees partners, which really reflects their culture of inclusion and belonging. So they have this hashtag to be a partner. And their main employer branding campaign is this. It's all about celebrating individuality and creating a sense of belonging. Starbucks uses the word partner instead of employee to show that everyone contributes to the company's success. This phrasing helps communicate their culture. They want people to feel respected and valued no matter their role or background. So, every photo, every story on this page features a real barista, store manager, or support partner, not any models. You'll see posts about milestones, diversity spotlights, and everyday moments in stores. That's a huge part of their authenticity. There's authenticity again. Candidates see real people with real experiences. Even visually, their content feels consistent with the Starbucks brand. There's the warm colors, community oriented captions, and messages that match the tone of their stores. The consistency across social media, job descriptions, and the company's website strengthens their overall employer brand. So when candidates see this type of content, it builds that emotional connection. They can picture themselves fitting in with that team. It also attracts values driven candidates, excuse me, people who care about that inclusion, community, and personal growth that matches with Starbucks' vision. Netflix is one of the best known examples of a company that built a powerful employer brand through transparency. So I'm going to scroll through their culture deck while we're doing this, while I'm talking through this one. Their culture deck, which they made public on LinkedIn years ago, lays out exactly what it's like to work there. Um, it's honest, bold, and very different from the typical corporate handbook. The culture deck is brutally honest about what they expect. They talk openly about holding high standards and only keeping the top performers. Instead of sugarcoating things, they're upfront, and that honestly attracts the right kind of people. One of their principles is freedom and responsibility. Employees have a lot of creative freedom, but they're also fully accountable for results. That balance encourages innovation and ownership, two traits Netflix values most. Um, this type of culture isn't for everyone, and that's okay. Their brand helps self-select candidates who thrive in independence and creativity. In a way, their transparency works both as attraction and screening. So if you read the deck and you feel inspired, you're probably a fit. And if it makes you nervous, it's probably not. Let's keep presenting here. Because they share that culture so openly, Netflix has become known as a place for independent, driven, and highly creative people. That consistency across their brand, hiring process, and employee experience reinforces their strong reputation. The Netflix culture deck has been viewed over 20 million times online and inspired other companies like HubSpot and LinkedIn to publish their own versions. It shows how being authentic and clear about your culture can actually strengthen your employer brand, even if it means it's not appealing to everybody. All right. So we've seen some great examples of employer branding that works, like Starbucks and Netflix, but even the best companies face challenges when building or maintaining that brand. So let's talk about a few common mistakes and how to avoid them. One of the biggest mistakes of, excuse me, oh my goodness, one of the biggest mistakes companies make is trying to sell a culture that isn't real. When the employees join and realize the day-to-day experience does not match what was advertised, it leads to turnover and bad reviews. Authenticity matters more than perfection. If leadership doesn't listen to what employers are actually saying, the employer brand starts to crumble from the inside out. Sites like Glassdoor and Indeed made it easy for job seekers to spot disconnects between the message and reality. Sometimes the careers page, LinkedIn, and social media all tell different stories about what it's like to work there. Consistency builds trust. Candidates should get to the same impression no matter where they look for information on your company. So let's move on to best practices. So let your people do the talking. Real employees sharing real experiences are the most powerful form of marketing. It feels honest and relatable. Don't hide the challenges, acknowledge them. Transparency attracts candidates who genuinely fit your environment. Use the same tone, visuals, and values across every platform. Consistency is what turns employer branding into long term trust. At the end of the day, authenticity and consistency are what make or break an employer brand. The goal isn't to look perfect, it's to look real. All right. So let's review the key points that we've covered today so everything really sticks with you. These are the main ideas you should remember about employer branding and social media recruiting. A strong employer brand helps companies attract the right kind of talent, reduce turnover, and stand out against a competitive market. It's about communicating culture, values, and an employee experience authentically. Real employees sharing their experiences like Salesforce Ohana culture, EA's Inside EA videos, or Google's Life at Google make the brand tangible and relatable. Social media platforms like LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok allow companies to tell their story creatively, engage with candidates, and humanize their brand. Whether it's visuals, videos, or posts, consistency across platforms and honesty in communication builds trust with candidates. Overpromising or inconsistent messaging can damage credibility. By focusing on culture, values, employee experience, visuals, and social media storytelling, companies can create an employer brand that attracts the right talent and sets them apart. Remember, a strong brand is not just what a company says, it's what the employees experience and share. All right. Before we wrap up, I want to take a minute to check in on our learning objectives and make sure that key points from today's presentation were clear. So, here are three quick questions to help you reflect on what we covered. Number one, what is employer branding and why is it important for attracting top talent? This question goes back to our first objective, being able to define employer branding and explain its role in the talent attraction process. Take a second to think about how you would describe it in your own words. Number two, name one way organizations use social media to strengthen employer branding. This connects to our second objective on understanding how platforms like LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok help companies tell their story and connect with potential candidates. Number three, which employer branding example stood out to you the most and why? We looked at companies like Starbucks, Netflix, Google, Salesforce, and EA, all using employer branding in different ways. Your answer will help you reinforce your understanding through a real example. If you can confidently, answer these three questions, then you've met the goals of today's lesson. Understanding what employer branding is, how social media supports it, and how these companies apply these strategies successfully are all of the goals of today's lesson. So thank you for engaging and reflecting. These are my references, and let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them.